Hey, everybody, it's Jonah Lupton, your host of the Startup Sense podcast. So, we have a really exciting interview for you today. I have Scott Moody on the phone with us. He is based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. So, this guy's done it all. He is an incredible entrepreneur. He started his first company in '98, took that company public, and then sold it to Apple for a boatload of money, and then retired, and then jumped back into it with his new company. So, we're going to talk about all of this in a few minutes, but first, I want to introduce Scott. Scott, how are you?
Good. Thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for joining us. Anything you want to add to the bio?
Well, I don't have too many people call me an incredible entrepreneur or actually incredible at anything. Just very fortunate that I get to work with some incredibly smart people.
Cool. So let's talk about your first startup, because not too many people have ever taken a company public and then sold it to Apple. And I believe you're still the only, your company, AuthenTec, was the only public company that Apple's ever bought. Is that still true?
I believe it is. I can't say I keep up all the time on exactly what Apple does in the acquisition category, but I believe it is true.
Okay, so let's talk about AuthenTec real quick. What did the company do? Why did you start it? And how did you grow it from two founders to an IPO?
So really, it was 1998. I was working for a bigger company at the time, Harris Semiconductor. I ran about a $200 million division for him and had the opportunity to meet a gentleman named Dale Setlak, who had this idea and a technology around fingerprint sensors. So although in 1998, not a lot of people heard about the idea of using a fingerprint sensor outside of, let's say, government or police, there were actually probably about 50 competitors out there that were looking to take the idea of a fingerprint sensor into the commercial, enterprise, and consumer markets. And Dale, who had worked at another group of Harris, had approached me on this idea and a foundational technology, which for a while we called the TruePrint technology, and to develop that and get into the market. And we were really looking at doing that as part of Harris Semiconductor. However, Harris Semiconductor business is a very cyclical business. And so they had some challenges at the time, and they didn't really want to start another big project. So Dale and I left the company back then in 1998, started the company, grew it over time. And then, of course, I think it was 2007, we took the company public. And as you had mentioned, in 2012, we were acquired by Apple. We had grown it from the original 2 people to roughly 300. And during the process, we raised, in addition to the IPO, we raised $70 million in venture capital. And it included people like Sierra Ventures, the Carlyle Group, Texas Instruments, Stonehenge Growth Equity. So a few, and even some of those are now investors in K4Connect. So that's a quick summary of from 1998 to 2012. I will note the whole idea of unique technology proved to be true. This whole idea of what a fingerprint sensor could do for you was a story that people were telling from, back in the mid-1990s, and certainly while those competitors were talking about it in the late 1990s. But I didn't really think any of the technologies out there had the capability to make the story true. So in other words, people had this idea of using a fingerprint sensor for security or privacy or just simply replacing passwords. But of course, that only works if it works on everybody's finger. And the technologies out there were not only difficult to use, there were major parts of the population, people with dry skin or somebody that might be older, where the fingerprint sensors foundationally didn't work. So, passwords are a pain in the neck, but if it's my house, my phone, my PC, I want to make sure I can get into it and find out that, my fingerprint sensor doesn't work. So this TruePrint technology had some unique technological capabilities. We spent about 2 years developing the technology before we came out with our first product, and then continually reduced its cost and improved it. And when we were acquired by Apple, we had something like 230 patents. So if you ever use the Touch ID, and Touch ID is obviously an Apple product, introduced after they had acquired AuthenTec, is it's exceedingly easy to use, to the point you don't even realize you're using technology. And that's exactly how technology should be. So, Dale's idea and all the engineers' work to make that come true proved to be positive. We were able to make, if you will, the story real.
Now, I've never had a founder on the podcast before that started a company that ended up with 230 patents. That is a lot of patents. But that's obviously that's a major asset to the company, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in patent, not only for their competitive advantage, for defense in case of patent issues, and then of course on the other side of that, if you just look at the investors, if things don't go well, and obviously they did for AuthenTec, but if they don't do well, it gives you a tangible asset, right, that you can sell instead of just getting rid of the furniture the startup bought. So for all those reasons, I will note though that if you go back to this, probably comment, maybe an error of this incredible entrepreneur that you mentioned about me in the beginning, of those 230 patents, my name was on exactly 0 of them. Just proving my point, right, that there was a lot more to my ability to recognize and hire smart people than actually to be smart myself.
Right. You don't have to be the smartest person to be the best entrepreneur.
Well, I would ever hate to talk about myself being even a decent entrepreneur. Just been very fortunate.
Very humble. Okay, so you sold the company to Apple 2012. They integrated the technology into their iPhones and iPads. I know you didn't really stick around for the transition. So what did you do at that point? It was retirement or looking at other ventures? I know you were an entrepreneur in residence. I think you've done some investing. How did you stay busy?
So, it was 2012. Our daughters were gone. Had grown. We're off up in their own careers. The company obviously was gone. And so, but to be honest, I was incredibly burnt out. I mean, it is a tremendous amount of work going through a startup, the IPO, being a public company CEO. And so I just decided, I was going to retire. And I thought I wanted to stay involved in startups, just really never do another startup. And so I had this idea of moving to Raleigh. I actually went to school here at North Carolina State. I got an engineering degree. And I'm not from North Carolina. I'm from New Jersey originally, but I met my wife in North Carolina. And in fact, we got married the weekend after I graduated and moved to Florida 3 days after that. So, if you take a look at the Raleigh-Durham area, the Triangle, really North Carolina in total, it's really a burgeoning entrepreneurial kind of startup area. And so for that reason, I wanted to move here and stay involved in startups. And of course, given that my wife was from here and there's a tremendous amount to do, she was real excited about it too. So shortly after the acquisition, we moved up here. I was very involved in the startup activities in the area, really helping anybody that needed help. I didn't take stock. I didn't take cash. It was just a matter of the opportunity to give back. I joined a lot of different groups, the Blackstone Entrepreneurial Network and a few others. But it was actually on a trip to Rwanda that I met somebody that inspired me to look at getting back into the startup game.
So what happened on that trip that inspired you?
So anyway, I met a person named Jennifer, and I was over in Rwanda. I'd been there before on mission trips, but this trip was with a group called Hope International, which is a microfinance organization. And during the trip to Rwanda, we met, a lot of different entrepreneurs and to see what they were doing. I actually spoke at some universities when I was over there as well. But we went by this coffee shop one day, and I had the opportunity through Hope to meet the owner. And Jennifer had gone over to Rwanda shortly after the genocide to open an orphanage. And she ended up opening 15 orphanages.
Wow.
And then she actually, as the story goes, started cooking cakes for the kids for birthdays and things like that. The next thing you know, she's basically running a bakery business and, selling cakes to help defer expenses to the people around Kigali, which is the capital. She ended up buying this coffee shop where I met her, and she turned it into a coffee shop / bakery. And she only employed battered women with the idea of training them to become bakers themselves. And then they would go off back to their villages and open up their own small bakery. And that's where Hope International got involved. And so when you meet somebody like that, gone over right after the genocide, opens 15 orphanages, employs battered women to teach them to be entrepreneurs and go back and go out on their own as an entrepreneur, you just, I was looking at what I was doing, and I thought I was being helpful and giving back. And then I meet somebody like Jennifer, and frankly, I was embarrassed. It's like, look how good this person is. Look how much he's giving back. And, just instantaneously, I felt like I needed to do a lot more in my life. And that really came home as we were touring the outside of the building. She had a small area that she talked about expanding the coffee shop into. And then she said, I can use the proceeds from that to further God's will in other ways. And for me, I'll be honest, it was, again, instantaneous. Like I knew I needed to do more. Came home, spoke to my wife about this idea of, I've only done one startup. We got lucky once. Maybe I know something about startups. So if we start another and we fund it and it's successful, then we could use the proceeds from that. I don't want to say further God's will, but I pretend like I knew what that was, but certainly to do good things. And that was really the whole idea of myself getting back into the startup game. And that's when I met the new smart guy, the new Dale Satlak, and that gentleman's name is Jonathan Gould, who had an architecture around what people refer to as the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, that really dealt well with the interaction between people, humans, and things. And so I think a lot of the systems out there were either exceedingly expensive or exceedingly difficult to use. And so everybody got the idea of home automation and the Internet of Things. I just didn't think there was really a technology out there to make that story real. And that's how Jonathan and I hooked up, worked on the architecture, and then formed that company our new company, K4Connect, in late 2013.
This is Jonah Lupton, founder of the Lupton Group and host of the Startup Sense podcast. Are you struggling to find the right tech team to build your company's website or mobile app? Maybe you've developed a product but need help with your go-to-market strategy, including branding and marketing. Well, stop worrying, because my team at the Lupton Group can assist you with all of those needs. We specialize in helping entrepreneurs and startups of all sizes launch and grow their businesses. For a free consultation, you can email me at jonahlupton@gmail.com or visit our website at luptongroup.co. So did you guys end up raising money, or were you self-funding for, at least in the beginning?
So for a while, it was funded by Catherine, my wife, and myself. And interesting enough, a little bit like AuthenTec when I said we were developing the technology in the beginning, we didn't actually pick a market for K4Connect. We felt that if we could develop this software platform technology that had this ability to integrate almost anything or any service into a common platform, that we could actually play that platform to multiple end markets. It could be the home, it could be enterprise, SMB, could be hotels, any number. And so I like that because, it gave us a breadth of opportunity, which meant it was a bigger opportunity. And of course, it helped, if you will, manage risk, because if one market didn't work out, we had others to choose from. But it was actually when I met a gentleman named Eric Braun, that I realized that our technology could really make a material difference in people's lives. And what led to our focus on serving the underserved as a mission-centered company, focused primarily on older adults, those over 65, or those living with disabilities. So we really completely morphed the company after this kind of happenstance meeting with this gentleman named Eric Braun, and then really focused on the end market that we are focused on now. So the company really went from, Jonah, most people, they look at it and it's proper. Here's my job, and here's how I make my money, and here's my philanthropy or my charity activity, and they're really two separate things. And we all of a sudden realized that our foundational technology really brought together both the market and the mission. And so it's a unique opportunity for everybody on our team. We're a very mission-centered company, really focused on improving the lives of those we serve. And as I had mentioned before, those are older adults and people living with disabilities.
So talk to us about that. Are you deploying this technology through like assisted living facilities, or is this inside people's houses? And are you actually going direct to them, or is it typically through their caregivers or their children?
So the easy answer to all that is yes.
Okay.
So, of course, it'll be over time. So, obviously, who we refer to as the client, the end user, that is the focus of our company. The 1.5 billion people in the world that are either over the age of 65 or living with a disability. 1.5 billion people in the world who are so often completely underserved by technology. In fact, most technologies don't even consider, these demographics.
Right, of course.
And so K4 product, being this platform technology, has the ability to play out through multiple end markets. Our first product built on our platform is called K4 Community. And as you had mentioned, that is specifically designed for the residents and the operators of senior living communities. Foundationally, the idea is making the lives of the residents simpler, healthier, and happier by integrating smart home technologies, health products, and even communication and engagement vehicles all into a single app. And that if we do that, then, we provide the operator and the staff the tools and the analytics they need to in turn provide the best in hospitality and care to their residents. So really everybody wins, but it always starts with a client. So in this case, the client is the resident, but the customer for K4 Community is the senior living community operator. So it's an enterprise sale, and once we have that sale with the operator, we deploy our hardware, our equipment, our services, in every room, every apartment, every cottage that make up the senior living community. Future products.
What kind of hardware is it? I mean, I know a lot of this is happening on a tablet. That's kind of the interface. But what other hardware is there behind the scenes? Are you guys installing like the thermometers and all the other smart technologies?
Yeah. So we don't make the hardware. We really use the best in class of what's out there. And I mean, of course, you see it being so involved in startups. The number of products that are coming out on a daily basis, for the home or for health and wellness is truly outstanding. And so what we want to do and what we do is take the best in class of those technologies, right, and in essence repurpose them. They're often not designed for the demographics and the people that we serve. We basically repurpose them for those that we serve. Many of these products, frankly, for me and you, Jonah, they're a convenience and sometimes just a novelty. But for the people that we serve that may have a severe mobility issue, just as one example, they really provide true value and true utility in their lives. And so those things include, like you said, a thermostat, lights, a number of sensors. We even manage the TV remote control. So almost any product that you can think of associated with home automation. That's what we call the simpler part of our package, simpler, healthier, and happier. The healthier is things like a Garmin activity tracker. It could be a scale. It could be a blood pressure monitor. But it's also things like, pill reminders. And then finally, the happier element is to make sure, in the case of K4 Community, the resident stays connected to their, if you will, former community, their friends and family that live outside the community. So that includes video or audio chat, messaging, picture sharing, and so on and so forth. So they stay connected to those people that they care about the most. And then it also gives them the opportunity to get connected within their community, because within the community, we provide things like all through the single application, all the lists of activities and the ability to actually sign up for those activities, newsletters, resident directories, and the ability to call people within the community, and even, hook up with people that may have similar interests, all through, our application. So that brings together the simpler home automation, the healthier health and wellness products, and the happier, communications and social connection. And so that's what we do for the resident. That, of course, is K4 Community. We have future products planned, an important one of which is what we refer to as K4 Life. And K4 Life is for the people that we serve in their own home. Everybody, I don't care who it is, really wants to stay in that home on an independent basis as long as possible. But more importantly, in driving toward our mission to serve the underserved, right, is not only a number of those clients underserved by technology, but the fact of the matter is they don't have the money to move into a senior living community. They may not have family and friends that can provide care or much, or can't afford a caregiver to come into the home. And so K4 Life, very similar to what we do in the cottage for K4 Community, is something that they can put, or friends or others can put in their own homes to help them stay, more independent, healthier, and happier while living in their own home.
Awesome. Now, so you have two main segments. You have the enterprise, or the, kind of the operators, as you call them, and then the consumer or resident, in their own homes. Two very different business models. I'm sure each one has its own kind of sales process and marketing strategy. So how do you acquire customers in those two different business models?
So right now in the K4 Community area, which is really the only product that we have on the market, we really just go to the top communities in the U.S. right now. We have plans for international expansion, probably toward Asia by the end of the year. Well, the end of next year, I guess. But right now we focus on the U.S. and we go direct to the operators themselves. So if you look at these operators, you can drive around the neighborhood and you'll see a number of senior living communities. Most of them are owned by national companies that, not only own a single community, they may own, 20 or 30, or they may own a few thousand.
Like Sunrise, right? I don't know if Sunrise is still around. I know they used to be. Right, they own hundreds and hundreds of them.
Yeah, exactly. Sunrise is a good example. I think it's their second or third largest in the U.S. In fact, one of their board members is an investor in the company. I mentioned, and now that I think about it, we had Catherine and I funded it. Once we understood our market, I did go out and raise roughly $10 million. And that included, the last round was $8 million. It was led by Intel Capital. But our investors include people like Intel Capital, Sierra Ventures, Lowe's Corporation, and a few individual investors, including myself again. Cool.
Yeah, I see Stonehenge on here, Sierra. How did you guys how'd you hook up with Lowe's?
They're a North Carolina company. They set up a small venture group in the last, I guess, couple of years, and have slowly been making in investments, kind of similar to an Intel strategy to stay. Obviously, want to make a little money in their portfolio, but it's to stay attuned to market forces. And in the Lowe's case, they clearly see, right, where home improvement is going to be critical, right, for this growing group of people over the age of 65. And so, they see us as a potential avenue to learn about that demographic.
And places like Lowe's sells other smart home devices, right?
Yeah, that's exactly true. So, I mean, to some extent, there could be co-opetition, although generally they focus on, other market segments. And there is a lot. It's not just what we do in terms of simpler, healthier, and happier, but our mission-centered focus is on that client. And so we provide, uncomparable service to that client. The ability for them, if they have any kind of issue or question, all they have to do is push a single button on, that application on that tablet, and they have, instantaneous communication with us. It could be a phone call through the tablet, or it actually could be a message. And so, when people look at us and they see whether it is, it's a company that is providing services to their residents, or for K4 Life, somebody that might be providing service to their mom and dad, they want somebody that cares as much about that client, their resident, their loved one, as they do. And given our mission orientation and that focus on the client, right, we care about that end individual, that end user, that client as much as well, maybe not as much as a son and daughter, but they know we care. It's not just, here it is, plug it in, send us a check every month, and thank you very much.
Right.
We're really focused on making their lives better.
I think that's why your typical senior citizen is scared of technology. They're not sure how to set it up. I mean, that's what my parents still don't even have Netflix. They don't. I mean, there's a lot of things that they're afraid to adopt. Because they're afraid.
Well, let me put it this way: I don't put the problem on the seniors, the older adults, right? I put the problem on the technology. A lot of these technologies, and I'm not, I don't want to be specific to any one, but a lot of these technologies aren't that easy to use. They're complicated. You got to do this and that and this, and you got to sign up for that and blah, blah, blah. There's like 5 steps even to get signed up on something. And so what I find is the technologies are not designed, right, for the demographics that we serve. And then, just as an example, you give, a new mobile phone, smartphone to an older adult, right? You show them a bunch of icons they can barely see. You then show them, here's Instagram and here's Facebook and here's this and here's that. All these things that they don't see much value in, right? And then you say, well, don't worry, there's, 1.5 million apps out there and you can download whatever you like. And they're like I'm going to do that. I'm going to learn all these apps, every one that has a different UI, some of which, are poorly designed to start with, and you've practically got to be a PhD to learn how to use them. So the fact of the matter is that they give that piece of technology, that mobile phone, right, to an older adult, and the older adult puts it down, and people say, well, look, they don't like technology. But the technology is really not designed for them. So what we really do is focus on designing for and with them those things that provide true utility in their life. And the example I always give, the analogy is that, my daughter's grandmother does not wear the same clothes as they do. But that doesn't mean she doesn't like clothes. If you design those clothes that she thinks look good, right, that provide utility, that are comfortable, then darn well she's wearing them. So that's really how we focus on technology. And in the end of the day, real success of technology is when you stop thinking of technology as technology, and it is just, a part of your daily lives. So if you look around the home and you see how much technology is there that seniors are using, older adults are using every day. Your stove has a ton of technology in it. What we used to refer to when I was younger as the icebox, right, has a ton of technology in it. The TV that everybody watches has a ton of technology in it, but nobody refers to any of those things as technology. And so when you are referring to something as technology, you have not reached the objective of technology to make it an invisible but ubiquitous part of your everyday life. And people aren't doing that, particularly when it comes to, older adults. And so I think that's where we really provide a real strong focus on using technology to serve the older adult, not the older adult learning how to use our technology.
Awesome. Now, how big is the team right now at K4?
So we're about 30 people. We've been expanding relatively quickly. I think we were probably only 8 or 9 at the beginning of the year, up to 30, and we'll probably double that staff in the next year, if not more.
Where are you guys hiring the most for right now? What part of the team? Is it marketing? Is it technology? Is it customer service?
So we've really been hiring all over the place, but I would say that most of our outstanding recs are in R&D development, in software development, obviously programming. It's not uncommon in this space where people load up, on marketing because they're trying to sell everything. We're really still focused on driving that technology forward, right, so that it's a ubiquitous part of your everyday life. And so we have a real strong focus on development and, of course, just like AuthenTec, really generating unique technologies that are patentable. So we have filed a number of patents as part of K4Connect, which, by the way, none of them have my name on it either.
What is it? What is the patent strategy, I guess, for the company? Or at what point are you able to file a patent? Because, we haven't really talked in any of my previous interviews. We never really talked about patents. People have asked me, is it worth it? How much does it cost? What can you share?
So I definitely think it was worth it. The fact of the matter is I don't think we would have been acquired by somebody like Apple, right, without all that patent technology, behind it. What we were doing was hard stuff to do. And so if it's hard to do, right, and you want to protect it, I actually believe even for software, there are opportunities to file patents. Yes, they can be relatively expensive. But the fact of the matter is that, they do give you a very defensible position. I think they're important in an acquisition, either a big acquisition like we had with Apple, or even if things aren't going that well, it gives you a tangible asset in the company. Obviously not everything is patentable and you can't afford to patent everything in any case, but we drive a real patent methodology. We meet as a team at least once a month to talk about ideas and things that we're doing that we think might be patentable. And then we take, really the best of those and work with our external lawyers to turn those into patent filings.
I was just going to ask you at AuthenTec if you guys actually had your own IP lawyer on staff or you used a third party. It sounds like you outsourced it.
So we did use a third party, a gentleman named Chris Regan. He's actually out of Orlando. He is actually the patent attorney for K4Connect as well. So he did a great job for us at AuthenTec. And then we also utilize him at K4Connect. And just kind of highlighting that he believes in our technology as well. He's one of those individual angel investors that I had mentioned earlier. So, but, one of the things, the key is not just depend on that external resource, but, make sure that you're training your engineers, your developers, in terms of what to look for, kind of how to write their initial summaries so everything is not written, just by more expensive lawyers.
Right. Okay. Is he affordable? I mean, I'll be filing a patent for one of my companies in maybe the next 2 or 3 months. Is he affordable for startups on average?
Yeah, and he'll work with that. I mean, so he's has an engineering degree, so he really understands that side. It's not like trying to explain something to somebody. And like I said, we used them from the very beginning at AuthenTec and the very beginning at K4Connect. And Jonah, separate from this, I'd be happy to provide you his contact information.
Appreciate that. So what does the future look like for K4? Where are you guys going from here?
I missed the beginning of your question.
No, I just said what's next for K4? Where do you see the company going from here? I mean, obviously continue to grow, but
I mean,
how do you take the company to the next milestone?
Right. So right now, really in 2017, so our mission is to serve the underserved, but our vision is to do that for as many people as possible, as fast as possible. So really, where we're going to really focus in 2017, while we're doing a lot of new development, we actually introduced a new product here at the very beginning of January. We have a great, product roadmap throughout the year. But the real focus, right, is getting out there and serving as many residents as we can via K4 Community. And then later in the year, we'll actually introduce K4 Life. So those are the two big milestones, really all driven by this idea of to serve as many people as possible, as fast as possible. We're in a hurry to serve, and that's exactly what we want to do in 2017.
Fantastic. So if the audience can help out K4 in any way, what would it be? Introductions to who?
Well, right now we're staying focused on the community level. So if people in the audience operate or are part of a senior living community, we would just love to hear from them. Or if they have even family, friends, parents that may be living in a senior living community and they would be interested, maybe those residents, those friends can talk to the staff and the operators, and of course they can contact us. And we would love to talk to them and get this installed in their community.
Perfect. How do you guys price something like this? I'm sure there's different levels. I'm sure there's a lot of different features that some communities take and others don't. But how do you typically price this out?
So we do have a modular structure, but more importantly, we try to do it as inexpensively as possible. Again, back to the vision to support, right, and to serve as many people as possible, as fast as possible. It's not about making more money. It's about serving more people. And so we have a real keen focus. If you take a look at the value proposition that we provide, it's thousands of dollars, right? We charge a complete nit of that, a lot less than you're probably paying for your phone or cable. So we have this real focus on continually driving down our costs to reach as many people as fast as possible.
Fantastic. Any parting? I typically ask, one of the questions I ask is, the guest before we end this is, who is someone that you'd like to be mentored by, or if you'd be mentored by anybody, who would it be? But you are kind of the mentor. Like, I'm sure some people look at you as kind of like their dream mentor, but I'll ask it anyways. Do you have anyone that you'd like to be mentored by? Is there a particular CEO that you've looked up to for a long time?
Geez, I wish you had asked me that question before we got on the call, so I wasn't a little bit stumped. But frankly, for me, it's people not always in the CEO world that have just served others. I mean, and you can think of a lot of people. Martin Luther King is certainly a person that really focused on their lives on serving others. And so I see the same thing. It's just that K4Connect, for me and for every single team member, right, at K4Connect, it's our ability to serve through our jobs and our careers. And when you have the opportunity to mix those two things, it's pretty cool. But it's this whole element of serving. And so I look at people, like Jennifer, right? Or I mentioned Martin Luther King, or so many others that really gave their lives to serve. those are the people I want to be like.
Awesome. And any parting words for the audience? A lot of the people listening to this are aspiring entrepreneurs, so hoping to start a company in the next 6 to 12 months. What could you share with them to help, give them, maybe a better chance at making it?
So I think one of the more important things is, know your why. It's not just about the product. It's not just about the team, but it's really to understand the purpose of the company. And yes, I know that we have this mission center, which is, maybe a little bit uncommon, where the product you're developing could truly make such a material difference in people's lives. But there has to be a purpose. There has to be that thing that's going to drive you forward other than just making money, that when you have bad days as part of your startup, and there will be plenty of them, it's the thing that powers you through, right? Because you think it's important that you're, creating some value for people. So I tell people probably the most important thing for them is to know their why, because that's the thing that's going to power you through on the dark days. And I don't care who you are, there will be dark days in your startup career.
Words of wisdom. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you for being an amazing guest today. You are an incredible entrepreneur, whether you want to admit it or not. You've done some pretty awesome things. I'm excited to see where K4 goes from here. So thank you so much for your time, and feel free to come back anytime and share more great advice with us.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jonah, and God bless.
Thanks, Scott. Talk to you soon. Bye.